Welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. My name is Audrey Monkey, and I am your host. I've been a summer camp director for more than 30 years, and I share ideas, stories, and tips to help parents and anyone else who works with young people raise competent, kind, optimistic kids. I've worked with thousands of campers, young adult staff, and parents over my 3 decades at camp, and I've learned a lot through my psychology research and work with families about how we can raise a generation of happy, connected kids who bring positive changes to the world. Summer camp, parenting, and happiness are my main gigs here at Sunshine Parenting. So if you're interested in any or all of those topics, you've come to the right place. In this episode, I'm talking with Tasha Shore. She is the co-author with Patty Wipfler of the book, Listen, 5 Simple Tools to Meet Your Everyday Parenting Challenges. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hi, Tasha. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Tasha, why don't you just start by introducing yourself and telling a little bit about the work you do with parents?
Okay. So, my name is Tasha Shore, and the work that I do with parents is twofold. I wear a couple of hats. One is that I advocate a methodology called hand-in-hand parenting, where we focus on helping parents to shift their children's unworkable behaviors through connection and also to learn how to support one another well in their parenting. And then I wear this other hat where I also do the same thing, but I focus on really supporting parents of young boys under the umbrella mission, really, of creating a more peaceful world, one sweet boy at a time. That's my little mission.
Oh, I love that. One sweet boy at a time. So tell us about your own family and your boys and how old they are.
Yeah, so, my boys, as you were saying, that somewhere you read a bio that said I have 3 young boys and now they're getting older. So yes, my youngest just turned 11. They're 11, 13, and 15. I have a husband, and we currently live in the north of Israel. But we're a bi-national family, I guess you would say.
Yeah, great.
Sometimes in the United States and sometimes here.
Right, wonderful. Well, tell my listeners about your book that you wrote with Patty Wipfler. It's called Listen, 5 Simple Tools to Meet Your Everyday Parenting Challenges. Tell about how the book came about and what the mission of this book is.
Okay. So how did the book come about is an interesting question. I mean, it's kind of funny in a way. It should have been written a really, really long time ago. Patty founded the organization, I don't even remember when, maybe 89 or something like that. And, she's been doing this work for probably 40 or 50 years, like a long time. And she started out by running a daycare and then turned it into a nonprofit. All the while developing these tools that are all based upon connection and listening in one way or another. And really, what she did over the years, she also wrote a set of booklets that were sold very, very well. Rather than a book, they were just these little teeny booklets, one on each of the tools and a couple of other ones. And they were kind of sort of 70s looking things
right.
that got passed around. And it just became time. The organization has been growing at a really rapid pace over the last 5 years or so. And it was time to go big and to really share the success of these tools with a wider audience. So we just decided it was time to write a book. And I was lucky enough to have Patty, who is my mentor, asked me to write it with her. So that's how it came to be.
That's wonderful. So really this is it's sort of the whole philosophy of the hand-in-hand parenting and providing all that you've been doing with your work with parents in a book format for maybe other parents who maybe can't access or are not in the area. Now, do you do online services through hand-in-hand or just live kind of coaching?
Yeah, we do both. So I'm sort of putting my hats back and forth. So both me and Hand in Hand have online offerings. So you can learn about the tools that are taught in that book in an online format.
Okay, well, why don't we just quickly talk about the 5 tools? I just want you to briefly go over. So basically, I love that the whole book it's about connection and listening, which are really fundamental things that parents need to do with their kids before anything else, and of primary importance. So why don't you just talk briefly about the tools, and then obviously parents can read more about them by getting the book and visiting your website. But why don't you talk about them?
Okay. Yeah. So first of all, they're really simple, but I also like to say that doesn't mean they're necessarily easy, and the different tools come more or less easy to different people, and that's just dependent upon kind of the hurts that set in for us as we grew, right? The whole philosophy, before I go into tools, is really based upon this idea that people are good, that our children are born good, and that they're doing the best they can. And along the way, as they move through life, and sometimes, it's a challenging birth, or, can start even in utero, but as they move through life, things happen, to be PG. Things happen, right? And the body has a natural process to heal from upsets, and that natural process is a release of emotion. So if you can imagine a young child who, let's say, crashes their bike and falls off, they will likely start crying, and crying pretty hard. And if we stay out of the way, they'll cry and cry and cry, and then they might calm down, and then they might look at their knee that got banged up, and then start crying again. And they'll go through this whole kind of healing process till they get to that place where, those deep sort of shaky breaths, they've kind of gotten to the end. And that process, what it seems to do is to allow the child in this situation to regain their ability to think, to not let the hurt that happened set in. I like to think of it as sort of sedimentary rock. It's like if the kid falls off her bike and we go, oh, it's okay, sweetie, you don't have to cry, just get back up, and we stop that process, then a layer of hurt gets set in. It just kind of sits there. And it might not, rear its head any time soon, or it might show up again as like a child who becomes fearful to get on her bike. But it might sort of be more subtle and it might not rear its head yet, but it's very likely as the hurts pile up and the sedimentary rock hardens that the behaviors get kind of stickier and more what we like to call off track, rather than bad behaviors.
Right.
So what the tools do are essentially help parents to help their children reclaim that healing process. So, because we've been taught that quiet means everything's going well, right? If we can stop our child from crying, or if we can just, stop them from hitting and distract them and get them to do something else, then everything's okay. But the problem with that is that because we're disrupting the healing process, if with a little bit of luck, we'll stop the off-track behavior in the moment, but we're not doing anything to shift the behaviors in the long run, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Okay, so one comment and then a question. So I think this is true for adults as well. I started thinking about that laughing really hard, and that's one of the things you mentioned. It's like laughing, crying. What were the other things besides laughing and crying that are the kind of catharsis?
That'll release emotions?
Yeah.
Oh, it could be shaking, sweating, sweating.
Okay.
Even it could be even having to pee a lot.
Yes.
You think about when people are scared, they'll pee their pants.
Yes.
I mean, that's a physiological reaction.
Right.
We heal from fear in these ways.
Right. And then I'm a runner, going for a run. I was thinking about that. You sweat. And so that's another way to kind of release. That's why a lot of people from exercise feel like they feel better or able to release things. Well, anyway, so that was one thought I had as I was reading the book and listening to you, is that these are true for everybody. I think adults also can sometimes layer those sedimentary rocks, if you hold stuff in too much. And I think especially as parents, that's where those big explosions come from, is when we've been not dealing with, not expressing or dealing with or getting rid of those emotions. But here's my other question as you were talking. So I was always, when my kids were little, I did not want them to become those kids, and there are kids that just cry and overreact to every little tiny non-truly hurtful thing. So I totally understand, the kid falling off the bike, truly painful, skin knee, bleeding, whatever. That is a true thing that, yes, 100%. What about what's your response to these kids who kind of use like almost fake things, like they're not really hurt? Maybe it's physical, maybe there is some hurt inside or something, but if they are kind of constantly doing this with adults, maybe their parents, but also other adults, like seeking that kind of attention for seemingly pain. How do you recommend parents deal with like that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if we go back to the premise that kids are good, and then the other piece of it is that they're always doing the best they can. So if we apply that to this situation, and I say, okay, well, it might be really like annoying to us, but that child really is doing the best that he can. And it is really our job as an adult to see that as a call for help and figure out how to help. So I don't really like the idea of attention seeking as a negative thing, because it's actually a brilliant thing. That child is showing you or their parent or that adult, like, I'm struggling. This is maybe annoying to you the way I'm showing you, but it's the best way I can figure out to show you that things aren't going well for me. And then it falls on us to figure out, well, where are they getting stuck? Where is the struggle? And for kids who have like that kind of behavior that you're talking about, I think the way that we help them is by using a combination of the tools that we'll talk about in a second. But essentially, we want to do a balance of showing them that we care and that we love them and that they're important, and also kind of pushing them to do things that they're a little bit uncomfortable with, but listening to the feelings that come up for them as we do that. So it's not like, oh, come on, like you're not really, afraid to get on that horse. Come on, you're not really. It's not a scary thing. It's not like that. But instead, we would do something like, let's think about getting on that horse. How about we think about getting on that horse? And then we notice how they feel. And the thing is, we can encourage them, but we have no control over the feelings that will come up for them. And what we want to do is just listen, like the title of the book. We want to keep sort of lovingly, like urging them towards the thing that they're scared of or that's challenging to them. And then listening to the feelings, because that's encouraging that healing process. Because even though it seems like fake to us, it's real for them.
Right. And I guess that's true, because when I think about how we train our counselors, we always say, validate their feelings because they're real for them. So that's even though like you might not feel like you're missing home and you think camp is really fun, that child is truly feeling this pain of missing home. It is real for them. So always, anybody feels better when you validate their feelings. So I guess in those cases, like, it seems like you're really hurt. Let's talk about it. How are you feeling? Where does it hurt? And maybe get them, so you're listening to them, and maybe you'll get to the bottom of, they just want to talk to someone, or they need a little bit of, like you said, maybe it's just they're being curious about it and giving them some attention, but maybe drawing them away from a thing if it's not really a necessary thing or something.
Right. And I think like what we've discovered is that the talking generally is for us. Like in those moments, in these what we call emotional moments, because of the way the brain works, like the prefrontal cortex where the thinking and the planning and the cooperation and all those yummy things happen. That part of the brain is really essentially shut down when we're in these emotional moments, these irrational moments. And so, before we got on the call, you had mentioned that the work somewhat reminds you of Tina Payne Bryson and Dan Siegel's work, and they talk about, I think they put it, connect. What do they say?
Connection before correction. Did they say that?
Connection before correction. They do, yeah, something like that. Okay. Exactly.
And I always say that. I think I got it from them.
Right, and the reason that they say that is because there's not a teachable moment there when the prefrontal cortex is offline. You can't skip over that emotional piece. You have to first move through it, and then you'll have a teachable moment, and maybe there's an opportunity to teach or have a conversation about, hey, what was hard for you earlier about getting on that horse? Like, what was going on for you there? Or what was that like for you? But in the moment, I would suggest just listening, just kind of urging them on and just listening.
That's so true. So you listen and kind of comfort and connect and just be there for them until they are at such a point where they can even kind of think through and talk with you. You're so right. Yeah, I love that. It is very consistent.
Or just even do the thing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Like get on the horse.
Right. Oh, correct. Yes.
I mean, it's just fear. It's just fear. Like fear is irrational.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about how do we move these kids through the fear.
Okay, so now I want to make sure that you can just at least mention the 5 different...
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. Let's just mention, just briefly, maybe just like one sentence about each one. And again, parents can delve further into them by... I know. Oh, will that be hard for you to do it?
That's a huge challenge.
Well, here, do you want me to feed them to you, or do you want to... Do you have them in front of you? Okay. Okay, so just mention like what each one... They're all different listening tools for parents to use. Why don't you just name and describe the 5 different tools, and then we can go from there.
Perfect. Yeah, and they really do fit together like pieces of a puzzle. So one of them is called Special Time. That is a tool that we teach parents to use to really build and nurture a close connection with their child. It can be used on a regular basis, sort of proactively and kind of filling their connection tank like you would fill a gas tank of a car, or it can be reactive. In other words, you can use it when challenging situations arise. So that's one. And it's really just a unique kind of one-on-one time that I won't go into all the details of what sets it apart from other one-on-one time.
Okay, but wait, no, I want to. I'm already going to know, because this is actually one of my things so at camp we always, and this is something I always tell parents, we call it one-on-ones. And I love how you describe in the book that the kid knows that they have your full attention during this special time. And you as the parent get to pick how long it is. So I think of the tools, that's one that I think parents of kids of any ages could like implement today if they want. And why don't you talk about some of the key things that parents need to do in order to make this really special time one-on-one, just them and their child?
Okay, perfect. So I was trying to keep it to one sentence.
Sorry, I know. This one was too important. This is too important. We can keep the other ones shorter, but this one needs to be longer.
Yeah, this is really the entryway for parents who are new to this philosophy of parenting. This is the place to start. It doesn't matter how old your child is. So how do you do special time? There's the things that set it apart are it is one-on-one time. So it can be more than one parent, but it needs to be only one child, which means that you can't be responsible for another child while you're doing it. You can't, have one in the bathtub and be needing to run in and check and make sure they're okay, or you can't like hope one doesn't wake up or something like that. You can't, we have to be flexible because we're parents and life is messy, but essentially the ideal is that you are just focused on that child. We name it. We call it special time, but I have clients who call it all kinds of things. It doesn't matter what you call it, but it's great to have it and have a name for it because the kids, well, for a lot of different reasons, but the one that I'll share right now is that the children learn that it's helpful to them, it's enjoyable for them, they get a lot out of it, and they start to ask for it. And there's nothing better as a parent than a child recognizing, even if it's not like a cognitive recognition, but like an emotional recognition that they need that, and they'll ask for it. Mm-hmm. So one of my kids used to have a real hard time when I would go out at night to teach or go out with girlfriends or whatever, and he'd have, that full on, like, hold onto your leg and not let you go out the door, and my heart is breaking, and like the whole evening is like shot kind of a thing. I started doing special time with him, and then what happened is that real quick he started to say, I'd say, I'm going out tonight. And he would say, well, can we do special time before you leave? And I'd say, sure. And it's so much easier to deal with that. And we would have our time, and then I'd go, and it was easy separation. So naming it is key. Timing it is also key. And timing it like with a real timer. And a lot of parents, not a lot, but there's a good handful of parents, a good percentage who resist this piece. And it is important for a few reasons. So your role as the adult in special time is to just pour in your love. It's child-led one-on-one time. Okay, this is really key to it. So the child gets to decide whatever they want. So you set the timer, and it can even be for 5 minutes. It doesn't need to be an hour. 5 minutes. Sweetie, I've got 5 minutes of special time. We can do whatever you want. So their job is to do whatever they want and lead. Your job is to be completely undistracted. No phone, no making a cup of tea, no answering the door for the mailman, nothing like that. You're just for them, and you're just pouring in your love. And again, not with words, not like, oh my God, you're like the most amazing child ever. No, that's not the point. Just with your body language and with your facial expressions, and you just follow their lead. Whatever they want to do, you do. Back to the timer being important. When kids start to really catch on to the fact that they can do whatever they want to do, sometimes they choose to do things that we don't like or that aren't generally allowed. And we encourage parents, if it's not an issue of safety, to let it go in special time. You know, if you're a family that's really conscious about wasting food, for example, your child might use that time to explore the kitchen. Like, that might be the space that they need to make a cake with dog food and flour and sugar and applesauce and green food coloring. I don't know. If you have a timer set for 5 minutes, can you be pleased with them? Whoa, that is a really interesting cake, you know, for 5 minutes, and not be stressed about the starving kids who don't have food. You know, if it's going to go on forever, it's very hard to just be pleased and keep our role of pouring in the love. So the timer is really key. So I encourage parents, even if you might feel resistance to setting it, to doing that. So naming it, timing it, child leads it, they do whatever they want, and you're basically not distracted. I mean, that's the gist of it. I mean, that's enough to go ahead and get you started.
Oh my gosh. And I think, you know, in this day and age, I mean, you see, we're so distracted, all of us.
Oh my God. So distracted.
Even just, I just like the part about your phone can't be part of it, and you can't be checking anything else. And that's why to me, when I tell people about a one-on-one check, I just say you're staring in your kid's eyes and talking, you know, listening to them and hearing what they have to say, regardless of what they're telling you about, whether it's their Lego creation or some story from school, and you're just giving them your attention. And what person doesn't love having someone staring at them and just listening to them? That is such a gift. And the thing about timing it is, it sounds kind of like, oh gosh, I'm only going to give my kid 5 minutes. But guess what? Most days go by for families where they really don't give their child sometimes. So even just starting with a 5 or 10 minute special time, and maybe it's even at bedtime or some other time that really works for a parent, but any way you slice it, it's going to be an improvement of connection. If you just consciously say, okay, I have 10 minutes or 15 or whatever time, and I'm not going to let myself, and I'm going to keep my phone in another room. And I like that part of this a lot. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I want to just add something, because you mentioned that a lot of your audience has older kids, because it can look a little bit different with teens. If you're starting this, like if you've started when the kids are young and it's, special time. But if you say to your 15-year-old, like, hey, you want to do special time? And they'll look at you like, what is wrong with you? Like, no, I want to be on Snapchat, right? So I don't want to be doing special time with you, whatever that lame thing is. So anyway, one thing that you can do when they're a teen is what we call unannounced special time. So it's like you take on the role of the adult in special time, so you're not distracted, you put everything away, you can set a little timer for yourself, and you could just plop yourself down next to them, or, you know, on the couch if they're watching TV or they're sitting on their phone, or, whatever it is, you just kind of make yourself available to them, even if it doesn't seem like they're interested in having you there. I'll share another quick story, because it's such a powerful one, of a parent who I know who started doing this with her son when he was like 13, I think. And he was pretty keeping to himself, and she was feeling pretty distant from him. And she just started going to his room and like sitting on his bed while he was literally on his computer doing something. And she would just go in and sort of say, hey, what's up? And he wouldn't really give her the time of day. And she'd just hang out there. And then when she was done, she would say, all right, I'm going to, head out and go do whatever now. And she just sort of started doing this regularly. And, after a while, I don't remember how long it was at this point, it was several years ago now, but at a certain point, one day she got up to leave, and he said, where are you going?
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm talking about like a month of doing this. I don't remember exactly how long it was, but they do care, even though like this sort of front of they don't care and they don't need us is there. They do. So to just make yourself available, undistracted in that way, they feel it, and it is important.
Oh, I would take that even. It's funny because this is what I'm experiencing now. I have 2 teenage sons at home, and what I always say to parents is, and what I do myself is, if they ever are, available or nearby, just give them your attention.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because, yes, sometimes nothing really happens, and then other times a whole bunch of stuff happens. You start talking about something or something comes up. My funny example, so I end up, at this point, I need to go to bed earlier than my teenage sons. And about like 3 or 4 nights a week, my son will come in and he just kind of flops on the floor next to my bed. And I'm like, I put my book down and we just chat. I mean, it happened last night and, it was like a 20-minute just, whatever, telling me about something that's going on with some homework or whatever. Nothing big, but I just remember thinking like, I'm so thankful that we still do this, even though a lot of the day it's grunts and not a lot of response. But then there are these moments, and I think as parents, just being available and recognizing, like you said, that they want that connection, even though they don't express it. It's not like they're going to walk in and say, I just need some one-on-one time, Mom or Dad. They don't say it. But if you make, I love that story, just sit on their bed, just be there, and know that they appreciate that. That's so cool. Yeah. I love that story.
And they're night owls. We were soul sisters last night, you and me, because my 15-year-old, he had been sort of grumpy all day. And then like last night, he sort of was all spunky and chatty and laughing and this. And I was looking at the clock going like, oh my God, I really want to go to sleep. I'm so tired. And I'm like, okay, no. I really need to stay here with him because he's on and I want this moment and I want him to know I'm interested.
Yeah. I know.
I am interested. I'm just also tired.
Right. I know. But that anyway. So, okay. So why don't you, let's see, we're kind of getting, you know what I'm going to say? Let's just focus on, we're just going to talk about that one and then one other one that I want you to share about. And then people will have to just go to the book and your website to get the rest of them. But I want you to talk about the importance of, and you'll have to remind me of the name of it, of seeking support from other parents. What is that one called?
Yeah, it's called Listening Partnerships. And this is one of the things that really sets us apart from other parenting philosophies. There's so much information out there that parents have now. I mean, we're flooded with ideas, things to try, what to do. Here, go do special time. I just gave you another one to, add on to your list of 400 million things that you're supposed to do. But the thing is like when we are triggered, right? So going back to that idea of the sedimentary rock and the hurts that we gather throughout our life, and if we weren't able to have the feelings and release them as the hurts happen, then they built up. And what happens is that emotional memory doesn't have a timestamp on it. So I like to use the example of like, if my grandma wore a certain perfume, that scent is like cemented in my emotional memory. And let's say I have a work meeting and somebody comes in the room and they are wearing the same perfume that my grandma used to wear. Like the second that person walks in the room, I'm, jettisoned back in time emotionally. It can be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50, it doesn't matter, but there's no timestamp there. And it can be pleasant like that. And I can be like, oh, my grandma, and I'm instantly, 3 years old and sitting on her lap all cuddled up. But it can also be negative. And that's essentially what's happening when we're getting triggered by our kids. And so what Listening Partnerships does is gives us a forum to heal from those hurts so that we can be less triggered in the moment when we're trying to help our children through rough spots. So essentially what it is an exchange of time between parents. So you would set a timer and you can do it for 5 minutes each way, or you can do it for an hour each way, or anything in between. And the role of the listener is to, kind of like in special time, only you're with another adult, you're just there to love, appreciate, trust in that person's intelligence and ability to figure out whatever it is they're trying to figure out. So it's not like in regular conversation with a friend, we wouldn't give advice. You wouldn't, suggest, oh, you should try this. And you wouldn't empathize in the sense of like, oh, I totally get that. That happened to me too. Nothing like that. We're mostly silent. And as we get more advanced, there are things that we can do to help the person we're listening to feel. So if our role as the listener is to be accepting and non-judgmental and trust in their intelligence and pour in our love, the person who's being listened to, their job is to find the feelings and to let them out, to release them. So it's an art, and you get better at it both as being the listener at helping the person you're listening to, and then the listening partner we call the person. And we also get better at using our time well when we have the attention of another adult listening. So at first we might sort of be like, this is really uncomfortable. Like, I don't even maybe hardly know this person. And it can be virtual, by the way. It can be by Skype, or it could be by phone, or it could be in person. And it might be uncomfortable at first, but we learn to follow that little tender spot and have the cry that we need to cry, or have the tantrum we need to have, or, rage about how much we hate our kid today, how we can't stand them anymore, because these are real feelings that come up for us, and it doesn't do us or our children any good to try to function on top of them. Of course we don't really hate our child, but the feelings are there. And so this gives a safe space to heal. And it just allows us to much better implement all these tools and all this information that we're gathering. We're so fortunate to be able to have now.
So do you help people find listening partners through Hand in Hand, or through you do that? Because as you were talking, I was thinking, okay, well, a lot of people feel like, oh, I do that with my friends, but I think this is different and almost might be better with someone who's not tied into your community, because you could feel more open about, even someone in another country or something who is also just trying to be a good parent. What a great idea to have someone that you can go to and just sort of, they have your time, you have their time, you take turns. So is that kind of a key to this? Is it sort of someone you don't know as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's really astute of you to have noticed that. So you can do either, but I find it, and many people find it much easier to, especially when you're starting out, do it with somebody who you don't know well. Because there's a really important piece that I forgot to say about that, which is that what happens in our listening partnerships remains there. There's a confidentiality agreement that happens. So if you and I were exchanging time, everything would just get zipped shut once the timer went off. And so what happens is if, let's say, our kids go to the same school and we're best buddies and we hang out on the, playground or whatever, pick up or drop off or whatever, it's very easy to kind of blur the lines and forget, wait a minute, was that something that she shared with me inside a listening partnership? Or is that something we were talking about, at the coffee shop after drop off?
Right.
So that's why it can get kind of fuzzy, because in order for us to be able to build the safety necessary to feel the feelings that allow us to heal from the hurts and the upsets, we need to know that information stays in our control and isn't going to come back to us, from other people. Oh, I heard blah, 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 for example. Once that safety is broken, then it's very hard to get there. So yes, you're right. That is much easier. And in answer to your question about, do we help people find listening partnerships? So, Hand in Hand Parenting, they have a active Facebook group, a free Facebook group called Hand in Hand Parent Support. And you can go on there. It's for parents who are wanting to learn the tools. It's only about using the tools, questions about them, whatever. It's moderated by great moderators, not me, but other people, instructors who are super great and very knowledgeable. And you can go in, you can post in there and say, I'd love to try a listening partnership. Is there somebody who is available, Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific time for 20 minutes or whatever? And you can do that. I also I told you I have an online membership community for parents of young boys specifically. And in that community, I teach parents how to listen to one another. That's one of the things that we do through support calls. And I facilitate them setting up regular listening partnerships with one another. And then I also have a WhatsApp group, which is less popular in the States, WhatsApp, but it's essentially, in Israel here, nobody even talks to each other anymore. They only communicate by WhatsApp. But it's essentially like a texting app that's free internationally. So because my parents are all over the world, we have a group that we can reach out to one another 24/7 any time of day and just say, does anybody have 5 minutes to listen to me? So it's like, we call it an emergency group.
Oh,
and,
neat.
And it's got rules associated with it, which I won't go into now, but essentially it facilitates I facilitate both the setting up a regular listening partnership, which is one way to use listening partnerships, and then having a place where we can reach out to each other in quote unquote emotional emergencies, which are the two ways that we do use these. And they are life changing. I mean,
I can imagine.
My ability to parent well is directly proportionate to the amount of listening time that I get, and I have regular weekly partnerships.
Absolutely, I think that was, as I said before we got on the main call here. I just think every parent needs this because, first of all, it helps you feel listened to, and just to know that you're not alone. I think so many parents feel so isolated in, the issues they're dealing with. And boy, they're very similar usually between, kids and families. And I mean, somebody else out there has been through what you've been through and can help. Okay. So Tasha,
Absolutely.
This has been fabulous. We've talked for far too long. We're going to probably have to do another one sometime. This has been so much fun. But I will post links to your different websites, to the hand-in-hand information, and to the book so that listeners can get that. And do you have any parting words or words of wisdom that you'd like to share with listeners?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I think we already shared a lot. I mean, I guess the parting words would be that you're not alone, that whatever struggle you're facing and however hard it feels to you right now, I'm confident that with support you can get through it. And I'm also 100% confident that you're not the first or only parent to have slipped up in all the ways that you've slipped up. Nor are you the only parent to have a child who does X or behaves in Y way. So you really aren't alone, and we are out here to support you and help life go better for both you and your whole family.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for being on, Tasha. I really enjoyed this.
My pleasure. I really loved it too.
As you probably can tell, Tasha and I could have talked for a lot longer, so we'll probably have to do another episode at some point. You can find notes and links to all the websites and information we discussed in the podcast at my website at sunshine-parenting.com. Search for episode 31. I'm going to close with some words from Tasha and Patty's book, Listen: 5 Simple Tools to Meet Your Everyday Parenting Challenges. Resilience studies validate what common sense tells us. It takes just one person in love with a child to provide the positive regard that a child needs to get a good start.